to this episode of Indigenous Interviews. I am Orjuma and I'm here with team Baksho Bondi or Shadowbox. We have the directors, the lead actor, the producers, an executive producer and the co-producers. I made it really sound like these are watertight compartments, but in true indie cinema style, a lot of people here have done more than one thing to make this beautiful film happen. And I start with that to both of you. You have edited the film as well, and you have also been the cinematographer and the script writer and one of the producers. So you have of course been established in your own fields doing what you do, but this was your first feature. And why the decision to do multiple roles again?
I can't be on a shoot without being behind the camera, so it's I feel a little restless without the camera. So maybe I mean the thought we did have a discussion about whether we should not shoot and edit it ourselves, and but then for us that's part, those are the tools with which we think. So so we wanted to continue, and that's what we bring also. So it kind of happened quite organically in the sense that because we do shoot and edit, that we did this for ourselves as well. But yeah, with other producers also, there's a lot of overlaps here.
Yeah, and we have also collaborated as cinematographer and editor in other people's projects. Yes. And during that time, we realized that we understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, and so sort of this was a very organic next step to use those strengths to sort of work on the weaknesses and then go on to the next level. So it kind of, for me, seemed just something we needed to do together. And yeah.
Naren and Sidharth, for both of you, for Moonweave and Bridge Post Works, this has been a very exciting time with Sabarbondi in Sundance and BakshoBondi in Berlinale. And you have both been involved in your core creative capacities and as producers in both these projects. And how was that experience like?
I mean, it was lovely actually, just being part of the project from early on, being part of the creative, going to Barkpur and setting the look, also training Sakshi, who was the DIT, on how to go about the entire process of offloading the media. So, I mean, you kind of felt like, this is your own baby and you're kind of, just helping to make it grow into, something that you'll be proud of.
Yeah, very similar. Sid and I have had the chance to work on a few projects like this where we've come on board as producers as well as creators, and I think the opportunity we have where we have facilities of our own allows for getting involved in that way, where especially with films, other projects that we've been a part of, that if they get to a last place, sometimes post-production can be that last step that they need to get to a finished film, and being involved in a way where you can come in and help and create together felt like a very logical next step in being able to give back to independent cinema, because we've both come up very much through independent cinema as well, and to sort of try and build community and continue community, where we both felt that if we do this, we have a chance not just to help these films and not just to get a chance to work also on really, really lovely films, but also to maybe try and do something for a community at large, where maybe we can talk about a way where people can come together to make a film happen, which is really something that we were afforded an opportunity to do with this film as well, where independent filmmaking can be quite a difficult process sometimes, especially because filmmaking itself is really expensive. So if you find a way where you can come on board in ways like this, where you can jump in as a creator to help or to create together, but also find a way where everyone, this huge lovely constellation of people, can come together to make a film possible, and in a way that's practically feasible, because films are quite hard to make in terms of the scale that they are, but is also creatively fulfilling, and also allows for a chance for filmmakers and for films to happen and to move to a place where they can find an audience. And this model, this way where we can all come together and set up something that's equitable and fair, in the sense that everyone here is on the same terms. There's no sort of preferential treatment for anyone, both in terms of the share and how they get paid out. It hopefully will allow for a lot more films like this to happen, and a lot more films to find their audience. And you know, a lot of times in the past, independent filmmaking has had to rely on European grants or grants from other countries that have bodies that can fund films like this. But doing this allows for a way that we can find a homegrown way sort of to make this work, and it's also a way that's practically feasible, where it's not a grant. This is a way that these films will get out, they'll find distribution, if we set it up this way with the strengths of everyone involved, these films can find their audience and they can be practically feasible, they can make money, and when that happens, hopefully that allows for more films to happen. So yeah, I think it's an example that Bridge has set for a long time of really being an equity partner and making independent film happen. I mean, if anyone was to jump back, go to the website, just look at that filmography, you'll see a history of independent cinema in the last 10, 20 years. So it's really a chance to step up as filmmakers and people in this community to say that how can we make this happen and how can we make this continue to happen.
And to go beyond your primary fields of work, also to Vikram and Shaunak and Aman, why produce? So, Andolan film started around 2020, 2019. Any particular trigger that led to that decision?
Well, Phantom fell apart.
Yeah.
So that was it. No, but to answer that question, I think the Phantom started because what we want to do, me, Anurag, Kukat, Madhu, we came together to be able to empower not only ourselves but many of the filmmakers who we saw were getting stuck within a studio system of they're being beholden to like one creator and one studio saying yes, no. And what we felt was if 4 filmmakers come together and be able to empower filmmakers, then you become the sort of the in-betweens between the money and the creators, where you protect the creators, but you also give the money confidence in the fact that you delivered a great film. And that's the model we made. And within that, besides the films that we directed, I directed myself, Anurag directed himself, we also produced Masan, we produced NH10, we produced Hutta Punjab, and these were films where wonderful filmmakers who might not have really had that sort of thing working. I love producing personally. I love the idea of empowering somebody else or helping somebody else or enabling somebody else, or just I think when you read a great script that you haven't written, there's that part of the jealousy of like, why didn't I do this? But also that thing that I must see this get made whatever way I can. And it's hard work and it's exhausting, but it's also extremely rewarding. And that's the reason I love doing it. I love producing because in value that I don't know.
Yeah, similar. I mean, aside from the self-evident fuzzy warmth with which we conceive of these two, the thing is that they're also robust, consummate professionals, and we all have like a lot of faith in the fact of their skill and taste in cinema. So that alone is, sort of exorcises a lot of fears that one might have in terms of whether one is in safe hands. That's one thing. But I mean, selfishly speaking, I think for Aman and myself, we produced in non-fiction, and there the mode of production comes from the fact that it's a very tiny, minuscule niche that has, worked with different modes of producing in documentary. And in this one, we wanted to, pick up the ropes and learn. But also the joys of this kind of a model where there is friendship without the threat of suffocating proximity, where there's clearly a kind of like collegial kinship without cramping each other's air. So that seems to me so far fairly, ideal, where we only meet at, film bazaar or festivals or cafes. It's all super convivial and warm, and hopefully other sort of like, cross pollinations happen. But above and beyond that, there's enough elbow room, So it feels like, it feels collegial in a true sense, where the glue sort of binding us is cinephilia, a general sense of liking for these guys, and also, the desire to bring something new into the world. So actually, generally, like, people would imagine that producing is a bit boring and a bit brass tacks and nuts and bolts. I actually think it's, for the most part, this has been fun for the most part. So it's actually been very both educational and genuinely joyful. And this is also our first fiction rodeo. So
and also the pleasure of seeing something on paper all the way to now, it really feels like that you've been through the entire birth canal of a thing that you genuinely loved. So that has its own inherent sort of satisfaction.
Yeah, I think when we started on the company, Shaunak and I, for all that breeds, at that point, I don't really think we had a clear long-term plan about how many other films we would produce, or would we move into fiction or not. But then within a couple of years, as Somo came to us and told us that he had the script, and apart from that, of course, we were getting offers for the non-fiction, we also realized it would be really nice to be involved with making good films in which it did not just consume every day of our lives, which is what happens when Shaunak directs the film. So that has been the enjoyable part of producing this and some of the other films, and that's why I think we'll stick with it.
Wow. That said a lot. A lot.
She's seen Shaunak's face at a lot this year.
You kept talking about how this is fiction and this is the first time you're producing fiction. Was there any difference in?
There's a giant difference in that non-fiction you're sort of like what often feels like waging a lonely battle of complete lack of interest and because there isn't any existent model, so this all that's all very self-evident. And there the kind of pathways in front of you are, you either apply for a grant which has its own sort of flow chart of ऐसे लिखना है, these are the places, etc., which unfortunately in India a very small niche of people so far have had exposure to, though now it's thankfully expanding quite a bit. Or you go through sort of foreign co-pro models or private equity. All of these are very streamlined, specific subsets of modes of arriving at it. In fiction, of course, there are very many different this thing, and this sort of a model in non-fiction is not a like we haven't encountered it so far. So I would give you a kind of a boilerplate cookie cutter response of fiction, non-fiction, but this is not a boilerplate conglomeration of fiction producing at all. So why this has been exciting is the fact that there's a kind of a slapdash improvisatory energy to it, and which is allowed us to be fairly liberatingly free, which like in terms of creative decisions has allowed them to hold on to their sovereignty, and for us to meet like an extended family through happy occasions. So there's no similarity between this sort of a model and anything that we have done in non-fiction, but this is obviously not a template for fiction producing. I hope it becomes so eventually, but not so far on this report.
And at what stage of the process did you guys come in as co-producers? And what drew you to Baksho Bondi?
I don't even know it's like what stage it was, because this has been in a very long time that they were with the project working on it. Naren, Tillotama and Tanushree. I think I got in when Prashant told me. Prashant is one of the producers, and for me it was a very clear putting my trust and the desire, the very innate desire to be part of something which qualitatively means something and does something to me, and the newsletters, like everything that has been part of this filmmaking, like the newsletters that we used to get from Somo were beautiful, and then I would share it with the other people, with Anahat, the writers, assistant writers, and the other filmmakers, that this is something that we should look at. This is how we should approach. So I think for me it was a very just desire to learn and understand that this way of living and filmmaking is possible. So it doesn't really matter. I don't even know. Like honestly, I don't even know when I came in.
You came between the 50th and the 53rd draft.
But it didn't matter, and it still doesn't matter. Like So yeah, for me it is just like something that I get to be here, and I get to listen and hear all of them, and understand their journey and their artistic approaches with each other. It's a privilege.
For me, I think it's been a very inspiring journey. The sheer talent and I think dedication that everyone in this room has. to even be a part of this project. And I just had set up my company coming from like mainstream series. I produced an independent film with BFI and then 2 working relationships with Deed, and we just got to meet everyone. And I think it's a great time, as challenging it is, and as Naren and Rupam said about making independent film, but I think there is a lot of positivity and there is hope. I hope this can become a sort of template for a lot of other films and more films to be made like this. In the sort of chaos in sort of more mainstream Bollywood, we're seeing a lot of smaller films in sort of different pockets of the country do well at festivals. So I think it is reassuring, and I think how to crack a business around it is in the works. I think this would be a way for us to explore that, but I think it's a very reassuring time, and the future is very exciting, and I hope all of us can continue to keep supporting local cinema and try to get our stories to the rest of the world.
How did the story come about?
We've lived with this film for more than 10 years. And what we started with was not necessarily what we ended with. But it, in a way, what has stayed at the heart of it is certain lived experiences that have been from my life as well as from Tanushree's life. Maybe Tanushree can start with this.
No, in 2018, I lost my father to stroke. He was only 64 years old, and my parents had a love marriage, which had a huge impact in their life, and all my life I saw this amazing love and this amazing strength that came out of it. And a lot of times my mother actually kept the family together like Maya, and I wanted to understand where that comes from. And I wanted to really genuinely understand where that comes from. And in 2018, I actually was in a very dark place. And for me, this film and trying to understand that love became like a ladder out of that darkness. So, and for, I think, if I can say that for many of us, that actually is also the root cause why we are here today. And so that fate gave us back already so much. So it's from there, it's from wanting to see and wanting to, there is this unseen world of strength, resilience, women, and even men who keep us going. And it's a way of, and this story kind of tries to tell them that we see you, we really see you, and we see you. So it's from there.
And Maya's character, like he said, incredible resilience, and also the lack of any support system in her life except the fact that she loves her husband. What were your first thoughts about the character, and how did you prepare yourself for her?
First thoughts was a sense of familiarity. It felt very familiar. I felt like there was a corridor of, women like Maya that one has had the privilege of knowing, and it felt like a, katha hai as opposed to a razai. Katha is like stitched together with things that are left over and then beautifully embroidered to make it look like it felt like a thing, collective. I mean, pieces of many women and men one had seen, but even the resilience, it has a opposing force, which is the desire to also sometimes give up. I don't think any force in itself can sustain without an opposing impulse, So for me, that opposing impulse is something I was struggling with, because for me to be a caregiver was a very new aspect in my life, because my parents were hugely independent and liked being hugely independent, and were fiercely so. And so we as kids, we really all of us did our own things, and we were always encouraged to do our own things and create our own universes. And suddenly when there is a vulnerability that comes into this otherwise perfect system, all of us fell down in ways that we didn't expect, and then got up in ways that we didn't expect, So when that was going on in the personal front, it felt like, oh my God, finally, in my mid-40s, I'm actually getting work that resonates with my life. Because when I was younger, I was either cast to play somebody older, or I was cast to play somebody younger, like forcing me to be an age that I'm not. And it feels like, in a way, it feels correct. I think, you have to walk the pavement for a while for, your shoes to really begin to fit you, and it started feeling like that. And I don't, sorry, to qualify the resilience, I think the resilience, yes, it's there, but the opposing force excites me more, which is the moments of insanity, the moments of exhaustion, the moments of breakdown. And so there's a moment where Maya breaks down, and it was so instinctive for me to comfort myself in that scene, and because I don't think you can just continue this without comfort, without a pause, Her decision, the difficult choices that she makes, it was important, for that resilience also has its limit, for you to be able to retract, to gain some strength. Like when in the lion goes back and then pounces, right? In that going back, there's power. It may look to everybody outside that, you're retreating, or you did the wrong thing, you left them, you abandoned them, or, so these opposing forces, excited me, and they had done so much homework about the character, that I didn't have to do any homework. So I just got it all and came on set.
How was the homework like for a character like Maya?
We were both were very struck by the films of Mike Leigh, and but one of the things that he really excited us was how he works with actors, and how through the improvisation process he would kind of invite actors to draw on a lot of real people from their lives, and the script emerged out of that. And for us, we wanted to take that process that he advised for acting to the writing. And so through the many years of the writing, we kind of had this workshop between the two of us, where we would kind of bring in stories that were from her life, from my life, from people from fictional characters in books. So we had a kind of a process of finding elements of character that were from life, and then and all of that kind of would seep into and get distilled into one character. So so the preparation was from life, in that sense, more than from story. We would kind of and then that kind of also percolated into when we were scouting for locations, when we'd find objects that had stories, we would share images of that to Tillotama, to, like, for example, we'd found someone's love letters which they're not opened, but they'd kept for 20-30 years, and this was such a beautiful idea for us, that in Maya and Sundar's relationship, which was would have been such a scandal, that she's married outside her community and so on, and Maya received these letters that she didn't open, but she's kept. So all these kind of the research and the process was filled with many examples like this.
That's very interesting. The love letter, yeah. And you shot this in Kolkata, and this is where you have grown up.
Yes, it's actually a suburb called Barakpur.
Barakpur.
Yes.
And how important was it for you to place the story in Barakpur, your first feature?
Well, it was personal, but it was also practical. because like if you actually go to Barakpur and tell the story of Maya and Sundar, they'll say, oh yes, I have a Fishir May who ran away, because I was just telling that even though it's a suburb, and even in say 90s, late 90s, when Maya would have met Sundar, she would have met him while having an egg roll, while he, with his crew cut hair, well done body, would just passing by, and they would exchange look. And here's this amazing, good looking man in his early 20s. So it's very natural, because it has the barracks, all the army boys go there to train themselves, and so these exchanges happen naturally. So actually, it's very natural that the story comes out of there. So even though we don't explain the story a lot, so the places, the spaces actually give you the story. For example, if you look at Maya's brother's house, and where Maya lives, you immediately know where their classes are. So the spaces itself tells you the story. And the fact that I was familiar with all that, and also I had the goodwill of people there. I have to mention that I've actually shot in my own uncle's house. I've shot in my dada, who knew me from childhood. And he said, you come, you can shoot in this house. And so doors were open to us. And there was generosity poured out of people. I remember when we were finishing the shoot in Maya's house, so all the aunties in the surrounding area, Shab Kakima, all the Kakimas will come out, and they forgot. They said, "Are tumra chole jaccho? You guys are going now. We have to go back to watching TV for entertainment," because they were actually heartbroken, because they were having full entertainment right there. Some of them are in the film as real neighbors, so they're playing. So I said, yes, please join in. So it was actually that much fun also, and I had that access, which kind of really helped us to do it there. Gave me a kind of confidence also that I am there, and so yes, and it happened.
Class was actually a very crucial aspect. You mentioned this, and it remains unsaid, but it's so important to Maya's character.
Yes.
And that was very, very important.
Yes.
Another thing that I was very intrigued by was the use of Bangla rap, and the fact that Debu's passion is dancing. It's so disconnected from the troubles and the messiness of their current life, and it's so well incorporated. Could you talk about that and how you chose the music?
So I mean, for us, another thing that we shared with Tillotama was playlists of different characters.
Okay.
So what we try to think, what would Maya listen to, what could Debu listen to, and Debu's, is the fact that he listens to rap music tells us something about him. And rap has also always had a rebellious streak,
Yes.
which is maybe what he wants and what he's struggling with. But there's also kind of, it's so full of life, and so we used two musicians. There's Bangladeshi rap as well as Assamese, and but this kind of was we'd found this during the writing itself.
Okay.
So it wasn't something that we came to later. And then Naren and Benedict, they did the score, which was kind of more the narrative arc, which is the giving the shape to the whole film, and that slowly became Maya's internal world, and that was another journey which happened after the edit.
And I'll talk about some of the things that we were talking about earlier. A lot of you are involved with independent cinema and producing independent cinema. And we keep talking about how we don't have proper structures in place to let such films live and breathe. But I keep thinking about this, that as soon as we do have any structure, it sort of becomes a part of a system, right? And there's always this fear that it will not be as independent, and a system comes with its own problems. So do you think that, should there be a system and a structure, or should this be the model where, you know, kindred souls like all of you are coming together and making this a lot more organically?
I think Vikram can speak to it, but my only 2 cents for this is that I think we've operated in the shadow lines between structure and complete lack of structure. And of course, when something comes under the aegis of a completely codified structure, of course, there's some kind of shutting down and all of those things and containment that happens. Having said that, remember, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. There are various film cultures where there is a robust independent film economy, which works through a mix of state support or independent cultural council support or grants and so on, which, as we know, are rather anemic here and like fairly sparse here. So of course, if that kind of gets more structured or formalized, that's obviously a good thing. Having said that, right now what's happening is that I hope this is the beginning of something where we move towards more formalization without it being totally clamped down or within the, Sauron's eye of censorship and so on. But right now it feels like we're in that kind of a initial preliminary stage where it's fairly open, and we're still also sort of figuring out or inventing and discovering our bonds.
Well, I think there's two parts to it. There's the funding part to it and the distribution part. I think the funding part to it, to what Shaunak says, we don't have a system of grants over here or state support as it was in the past with NFDC. I think some of us have been lucky to be able to get private money to make our first films, and then have gone on after that to get money from studios and stuff. So yes, there's a gap there when it comes to independent cinema. So who's going to fill that gap? Not everybody can go out and find some rich people who are going to put multiple crores at the minimum. So this model is something that I think has worked here, and where it's like it comes from a core of Shaunak and Naren and Jim and Sid, where they all come together and say, let's do this. We all come on board because A, we trust them, we love these two, we love the film, and therefore it's very easy to say yes. And then sort of come on board and say, okay, let's get the film made, and then we move to part 2. Now the part 2, the problems are, to exactly what you said, you make a system and then it gets taken over. It's exactly what happened to multiplexes. They were supposed to be alternatives to the single screen, but the multiplexes have now become monoplexes. So therefore, where do the indie films go? Streaming has not been a viable option, which we've seen. And there's still yes, the ideal solution to that would be to be able to have breathing space for everything. Yes, 90% of the screens can be used for commercial cinema, yes, but can we please leave that 10% alone? But even that doesn't happen. So it is a struggle there to be able to find out. And maybe this model of being able to come in and being able to say multiple producers coming, who we leverage whatever we can, in whatever way we can, to be able to make sure the film actually gets seen, gets heard, gets screens or whatever. So the first part solution seems easy. Second part, we'll have to see with this one how this goes. Yeah, we're positive. I think that in the last 2 years, indie cinema, especially when it comes to Patil's film or Suchi's film, they've gone out, they've got deals, they're being seen, they've been sold. That's great. That's a positive sign for us as well. So.
And just to remember, Patil's and Shuchi's film and the few that have come out recently have also had limited theatrical releases and have had theatrical releases in specific theatres that historically have shown good cinema, be it the IFC or Film Forum and so on and so forth. And what we obviously need is something like this. So I can imagine that the best case scenario of this timeline, the most euphorically optimistic scenario, would be where we figure out some, like, even a location where, and we know that these kind of models work, or for instance, templates like the Danish Film Institute, or, there are film cultures who have select theatres, like he said, like 10% theatres, or even lesser in this way. We don't even need, 10% is giant, and some kind of support, and that alone will actually really move the needle.
I think even with the limited, if they are limited in whatever structures are there in the country right now, if you look at, say, Film Bazaar, for example, there are a number of independent films, some of the films, for example, that Sid and I have worked on, we found those films, we met those filmmakers through these existing structures. So I think there's definitely space, hopefully, for more of them, and for more, I think, for a robust kind of independent film ecosystem to work, it needs all of them. It needs people who are coming in with private equity. It needs people who can come in with soft funds, and it needs distribution, and it needs filmmakers who can find a way to navigate that entire system as well. And that comes through open networks, and it also comes through community, of sharing that knowledge and of finding a way that we can all collectively sort of push the needle in any way that we can. So whether that opens the door for more film, more structures, more soft funds, more private equity, more distribution. And to speak to Shaunak's point, I mean, it is really, it's an optimistic time, because we've seen that for the few films that, especially in the recent past, that have managed to crack that and find a way to come out, there have been audiences. And people have gone to watch those films, and they've made money. So it's not just I mean, we're all here because we all believe in the film, and we all have a passion for cinema that we want to support. But it's also a practical and viable way of making films that can sustain itself economically as well. So there's a future to that, and I think Ishaan, you were speaking to that point as well.
Yeah, we were just discussing you as well that the NFDC the ball is being pushed in the right direction. We've given, there is great rebates, but there's cash flow issues. If you're shooting in other countries like Texas, the minute you get the rebate approved, companies can cash flow you. So I think from a grant perspective, there is a long way to go to get to grants. But as Naren said, the infrastructure to be built, you need a bunch of everything, from grants to private equity. And if this model is successful, and seeing Indian films, blow up in other countries, I think that it's looking very positive overall. I mean, a math which really blew my mind is it literally takes 5% of Hindi going audience, which is about 10 crore. At 50 lakh people at a 200 rupees ticket, it's to reach a 100 crore club. So it's, on paper, it's a crazy business, right? All you need is 1% also gets you 10 crores. So I think the opportunity is there, and there's a growing appetite for films that are not just mainstream, but are, just powerful stories and real. And I think streaming in a way has changed things. It's also given an audience a higher level of programming. So the way you look at films today, a lot of the mass audiences have accessibility to a lot of foreign, like HBO and Apple. So you can really premiumize and push. I think it really comes down to storytelling. We're making it for the love of storytelling, and we go true to the art. And this system, I hope, will really find this place.
Also, not to belabor this too much, but I just realized, I think it's worth noting that most of us here are actually here because of the tyranny of necessity, in the sense that we're here, there's actors, we're not really like legacy producers, right?
Yeah.
There's somebody who works on color, there's a sound person, there's a documentary filmmakers, there's fiction, like we're all like a assortment of different, and including Jim and Nikhil, etc. None of us are like me se pretty, it's not that, right? And it's obviously because everybody palpably feels that there is a hole, there is a gap, and we need to chip in our imperfect pushes and nudges to fill it. And that's how this is, it's the beautiful spontaneity of this aggregation, which is nice, and it's also very pressing and urgent, therefore.
That's the thing. It's best if you guys chip in, or does the state chip in? Which one works better for the likes of Tanushree and Saumyananda? That's the whole
I don't know if
point.
there's an either or per se. In this case, it's in the yawning gap of the former that this sort of group has come together. But, one keeps looking at our compatriots in other, other film cultures where there is a lot of support. So, they're the kind of work that, say, a Danish colleague of mine would be to spend a lot of time writing a proposal and making a demo reel or mood reel for their film. Now, here that's not, we don't know where to submit this in terms of, intranational places. So, or there are only very few, because of which one, leans on this kind of a, and just to also obviously signpost, this is rare, and this is like nobody here is taking it for granted. We are fortunate that this, like the stars aligned that this happened.
But I'd just like to qualify that one of those early steps where we did meet our French co-producer came through those small bits of existing state funding that are there. We met at Film Bazaar, So whatever's there, I mean, people are hungry and they're jumping at it and using it. So, there are places where they're helping, and I really hope that they can, grow. Yeah.
And do we have any distribution plans in place for?
Hopes and prayers.
I think that, I mean, we're looking to the example, like, you know, you mentioned of these films that have had, similar films that have had somewhat similar journeys that have found distribution. So what that's made clear is that there is an audience and there is an opportunity, you know, to find distribution both online and in theaters, and to find success in distribution both in India. And if you look at All We Imagine Is Light and Santosh, Santosh has done really, really well in France, and All We Imagine Is Light has hit nearly $1 million in the US. So there are, and Girls Will Be Girls as well.
Girls Will Be Girls.
All of these films have found success in distribution. So where we see a door, we see it open, and where the network is.
It's a patient process.
Yes.
That's one thing you.
Yeah.
Lastly, how was Berlinale, and how was the journey like that it's going, and does that help in the distribution and all of these aspects?
I think with Berlinale, there's a very wonderful coming home sort of the story that Somo constructed.
I was when I was 17. I went for the Tale campus and had workshops with people like Wim Wenders who was here. He was right now here, and so that was a changing point in my life. And it really feels like full circle going back 20 years later with our first film. So that feels very special. Yeah.
Yes.
All the best. All the
Thank you
best
so
for
much.
the film, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
কথা শুনতে পারে না, আমার ঘরে কোথায় যাচ্ছিস?